Hi, my name is Wendy Pine. I'm a financial advisor with Protegro at protegro.com. We're a holistic financial services firm. Today, I'm excited to talk about disability insurance, what it is, what it's used for, why would someone consider buying it, and things to keep in mind if you are looking for this type of coverage. If you think about all the different insurances that you have in your life, for example, you may have car insurance, health insurance, maybe you even have a life insurance policy you got on your own, or maybe you have it with your employer. All these things protect you in the event of an accident or illness, or in the worst case scenario, death. But what happens if thankfully you don't die, but either have an accident or you're sick and you can't work for several weeks, maybe several months, or even several years? That's where disability insurance kicks in. Disability insurance is paycheck protection insurance and replaces a portion of your paycheck if you have to be out of work due to an accident, an illness, or an operation. By protecting your paycheck, disability insurance can potentially allow you to maintain your standard of living, stay in your house, keep the kids in the same school district, put food on the table without unnecessarily having to rack up debt in order to cover those basic necessities. Personally, I think disability insurance is an important benefit because that helps to make sure your overall financial plan and goals do not get derailed by an illness or injury. When we think of disability insurance, there are really two types. One is called short-term and can provide a portion of your paycheck for as little as 3 months and as long as 2 years per disability. The other is called long-term disability and can cover someone beyond those 2 years, meaning a person could receive a portion of their paycheck for 5 years, 10 years, or to age 65 or 67, depending on the insurance company and what you've elected. There are 3 key things that make up a disability policy. The first is, how much do you need? The second is, how long do you want to be covered for per disability? And the third is, how soon would you want the insurance company to start paying you? Also known as the elimination or waiting period, and it is similar to a deductible. As an example, I have some clients that say, based on my income, I know that I'm eligible for $5,000 a month. But all I really need is $2,500 to make sure that my core expenses are taken care of, like my mortgage, my health insurance, my bills, and food. I want to know that per disability, meaning each time that any accident or illness ever happens to me over my working career, my policy will pay 12 months of income, but only after I've been out of work for 60 days. And this is something that somebody can design. This is just an example. If I have sick time and an emergency fund, I can self-insure for the first 60 days. But beyond that, there may be some issues. So I know that per disability, I can get $2,500 for 12 months after I've been out of work for 60 days. If I'm out for a total of 10 months, then I've been paid for 8 months. If I've been out of work for 12 months and 60 days, then I've used up my 12-month benefit for that disability. I have no more paycheck protection left for that particular issue. Now, God forbid, hopefully I've recovered, I've gone back to work. If something else happened, I get like purple spotted craziness going on, and I'm out for another 10 months, that is a different disability. I get a new benefit period. Now, when would it make sense to consider buying this type of policy? Well, not only do I recommend this type of plan if you need a consistent paycheck to cover mandatory bills and specific goals like retirement or maybe vacation, I strongly recommend that if you have a highly specialized skill, position, or you're in a labor-intensive job, the ability or inability to use your hands or your specialized skill could force you to consider a different career altogether. For example, if you are a surgeon and something happens to your hand, teaching may be an option, but you may not be paid as much for that particular job as you were as a surgeon. If you're a business owner or you have a key employee, disability could be an important consideration as part of protecting the business interests. If you or your CEO suffers a stroke and is out for an extended period of time, who's going to be performing those duties and driving the success of the business? Key person disability coverage can help keep the business on track. Additionally, as an employer, if you decide to offer disability insurance, that could be a really wonderful addition to retaining and maintaining key employees. Now, what are the considerations about disability insurance? Well, for the interest of keeping this video relatively short, I'm only going to mention a few. First, disability insurance does not cover 100% of your paycheck. Typically, it covers about 60 to 70% of either your pre-tax or post-tax paycheck, depending on the insurance company and what your employer allows. You might be thinking, well, that's crazy. I need at least 100% of my check. Well, I know that this doesn't apply to you or me because we'd want to get back to work as soon as possible, but there may be some people out there that don't have as much incentive to get back to work if they were receiving 100% of their pay. If you do get your disability benefits through your employer, you may find that there is a cap on that disability amount. For example, if you are a high-income earner and your company's disability plan covers maybe 20% of your check, that would probably be a good time to plan for either with savings or an outside disability policy to kind of buy you up. If you have a disabling event, you don't need to stress about how to make the most of that 20% you're going to be receiving. Now, if you can get disability insurance through work, either long-term, short-term, or both, you probably can get the policy when you first start working there or during open enrollment without having a physical or the need to answer any medical questions. If you choose not to enroll in disability coverage at work during those periods, it may be difficult to get coverage later on because of medical questions. Again, insurance companies like to make sure that healthy people sign up because they want to make sure that they can pay out on legitimate claims. As I like to say, it's kind of like calling for homeowners insurance when your house is on fire. If you know that you're sick, injured, or you need an operation, purchasing disability insurance when you're eligible for it with no questions, or when you're healthy is the preferred way to go. If you happen to purchase disability insurance outside of your employer, you are more likely to have to go through a physical, answer questions such as history, family, medical, and have a financial and medical background check. It's not uncommon for an insurance company to say they'll not cover or cover certain conditions or things that you've been treated or diagnosed for. For example, let's just say you have plantar fasciitis, which is a foot issue. They may say they're not going to cover any disability resulting from plantar fasciitis ever, or maybe for the first 2 years that you own this particular policy, but they'll cover you for everything else. And speaking of coverage, you'll want to look at the policy language carefully so you know what types of disability it covers and, most importantly, what it doesn't cover, such as, does it cover mental health issues such as depression? Does it cover something you are currently dealing with? Will it cover maternity, which I will get to that very soon. Other language details such as how the insurance company defines disability, such as, is it the inability to perform your job, or is it a more restrictive form of disability like Social Security disability, which is the inability to perform any job? There's no self-diagnosing. You have to be under the care of a physician who would fill out the paperwork to say that you are disabled, what the diagnosis is, and how long you are potentially going to be disabled for. If your doctor expects that you're going to be out of work for a minimum of 6 months, but just writes that your next treatment is going to be next week and doesn't mention the 6 months, the insurance company is potentially going to be paying you up to that next treatment period, and you're going to have to fill out the paperwork again for continued disability payments. So with maternity coverage, and as a female with children, I completely understand that childbirth and having children could be considered a disabling event. Maybe for some people for many, many years. But I love my kids. They're awesome. But unfortunately, even if you have 12 months of disability coverage available, understand that the insurance company is not going to pay for you to be out of work due to maternity for 12 months. If you pick up disability insurance through work, they may have a maternity policy as part of the company benefits package. You may get 12 weeks of maternity, or you may get 6 weeks of maternity. Hopefully, having children is a choice. It's not like an accident or illness where it's unexpected and unwanted. And it's because of that choice, insurance companies, if they do cover maternity benefits, they treat it like it's an illness, but will cover you for a shorter period of time. To give you an example, let's just say your policy at work allows you to be out on disability for an illness or operation for 6 months, but only if you've been out of work for 14 calendar days, not 14 work days. So if you have a maternity, if you deliver a child, the most you can get is 6 weeks for normal delivery and 8 weeks for cesarean, but you still have to meet that waiting period of 14 calendar days. If you have a illness, a preeclampsia, something that puts you out of work first, and then you deliver, you get the full 6 or 8 weeks of maternity. Because you know you're responsible financially for the first 2 weeks of any illness, maternity coverage. So the first 2 calendar weeks after you give birth, or if your doctor puts you on medical bed rest, which again, you need a diagnosis code. If you deliver without a C-section, you'll be paid for 4 weeks of maternity. If you have a C-section, you only get paid 6 weeks of maternity. And again, that's if you work right up to your due date. If you have an illness, you can meet that with 2 weeks before something pregnancy related. If you want to be out longer to recover, bond, etc., understand that there is no medical diagnosis code for that. The insurance company is not going to cover you any longer than that time period. If maternity is covered, it is the exception to the normal disability benefit period. If you purchase disability insurance on your own, maternity benefits are typically not covered. However, any serious medical condition as a result of pregnancy probably would be covered. So unless you have a plan that provides for automatic increases over time, or as your pay increases, your disability insurance company does not know that you make more money. I'm telling you right now, nothing worse than realizing when you're out on disability that you hadn't changed the plan since you first signed up 10 years ago, when you're eligible for $500 a month in benefits. Now, fast forward, you're kind of a big deal now, and you're eligible for $20,000 a month, but you forgot to update your policy. Not fun. Lastly, if you do get your life and disability benefits through an employer, understand if you decide to change jobs, you may or may not be able to keep your coverage. Looking into how to take your policy with you, and if any definitions change if you do take it on your own, would be really important to understand before any events happen. This was quite a lot of information, and I feel like I just scratched the surface, but I thought this was a really important concept that's often overlooked as a conversation, and I think it should be highlighted more often. Because there are a few disability carriers out there with different definitions of disability, different price points, different add-ons that may be important to you, I would strongly recommend that you work with a financial advisor who is very familiar with this disability arena. If you're an employer, again, if you're looking for group coverage, there's different coverages that are out there. Subscribe below for more information. If you'd like help exploring your disability insurance options, looking for pricing, have suggestions or questions for in regards to a future video, please shoot us an email at info@protegro.com. Go to protegro.com for other videos, information, and to sign up for our newsletter. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today. Thanks so much. Till next time.